Hi, what's up, everybody? Good to be with you again. Ever since I started playing Football Manager and started following what's happening on the message boards and on the sites where you can download this and download that, there's a question I've always had. And the question is, how do people do tactic testing? I see so much about it. You see other YouTube videos who talk about it. You see people who talk about it on message boards and people who boast that their tactic is good at doing this and good at doing that. But how really does it work? One of the reasons why I've always had this question is because I know from playing Football Manager that there's a lot of aspects of this game that are variable, including things that we kind of wished weren't variable. If you haven't seen my videos before on the subject, you'll see me talking about stuff like cohesion and how important it is to have good team cohesion if you want to stand any sort of chance at victory, right? Same thing is true with things like injuries, right? If your star players all become injured, chances that you're going to be successful are a little bit less. Even if you play with tactics that have been tested and have been proven to be overpowered, you know very well as I do, that it really matters what players you have and that you have the right personnel for the tactic. If your players don't match what you're trying to do, you're going to have a hard time winning no matter how good your team is. There are all sorts of problems like this that come up in Football Manager. And so I've been looking around a little bit to see if I can figure out exactly how this works and exactly how the best in the business do what they do. And fortunately, the other day I noticed on one of the Discord forums that there was a post about this very topic. So let's go take a look and just sort of see what this is. I'm not a tactics tester by any means, but this is what I found, and I thought this was actually pretty interesting stuff. I've cut out names and stuff like that. As you can see, this is a screenshot. I don't want to call anybody out, or I don't want to inadvertently advertise something I wasn't supposed to or whatever. This is sort of a FAQ for tactics testing. And the question, of course, is first, what test league do you use? And that's a real big question, right? Because if you're using a certain league with a certain team, you might be able to win no matter what tactic it is you have. A couple of years ago, when I started really taking this stuff seriously, I would notice that a lot of tactic testing would happen with Liverpool in England. And frankly, with the sort of teams that they had in, I don't know, like FM21 or FM20, you would have to really try hard to not win, right? And so it's not necessarily a case of a tactic being good as much as it is a case of the team being good. So they say here that we use a custom test with 3 leagues, one for each test team. One team is a squad of players with a current ability of 160, another with 140, another with 120. So if you don't know what current ability is this general measure in the game that reflects the player's current ability to play on a 0 to 200 scale with, I don't know if 100 is necessarily average, but you can sort of think of it that way. The squad covers all playing positions, and the players have been carefully designed so that they have the same ability in each role and duty. This means that all formations can be tested equally, right, which is important. So you're making sure that you don't have a real good result from one formation because there's a player who naturally is a good fit into that formation. I'm thinking again of like Cesar Aldana with the BYU save that we just ended up with. He was a good fit into the formation, even though he wasn't really that great of a player. The test leagues have AI teams with different abilities that play the most common formations used by AI teams in the game. Note that there is an AI team with a current ability of 180. This means that even the current ability 160 team will face some challenging games and will really stretch the tactic, right? That's done by design. It's a very, very good design. How many games do the teams play? The leagues have 24 teams, and teams play each other 4 times, giving us a total of 92 games per season. So overall, a tactic plays 276 games over the 3 leagues. We aim to run each tactic 3 times, and then average the performance to minimize the effect of the natural randomness and variance in the game. This gives a total of 828 games. Again, if any of you have ever felt that Football Manager is cheating and that it's scripted, read this again. We're trying to minimize the effect of the natural randomness and variance in the game. The game has a lot of variance and randomness in it. It's not scripted. Trust me, it's not. I've done save scumming in the past. I can assure you that there's nothing scripted in this game. If you run the same match over and over again, you keep losing. The problem probably has to do with your tactics or your cohesion or the way you're treating your players or something like that. It probably is not because the game is scripted or that Sports Interactive is against you. Now, what do the scores mean? So this particular tactic testing group gives a score on a 0 to 100 scale. Every tactic has been given a score for each of the 3 teams. The scores are based upon the performance in terms of points and goal difference and are relative to the top performing tactic. That is, a score of 100 or 100% means that the tactic will have scored the most points and have the largest goal difference. The scores are also dynamic, so if a new tactic comes along and has the best performance, then it would score 100% and all the other tactics would be rescored according according to this new benchmark, which is a real interesting way of doing it. Again, I think this is a very, very good and positive approach. And then the overall score is the average of the CA 160, CA 140, and CA 120 scores. In other words, these tactics that you use, and these are mostly the KNAP tactics, the tactics that you use are kind of designed to work with a good team, an average team, and a poor team, sort of underdog type team. The next question, and this is the real important question for us, do you freeze during testing? What we mean by freeze is, are we trying to keep everything else as a controlled variable? Are we trying to eliminate randomness and other things? And they say, yes, we use FMRTE to freeze all players in the leagues to minimize the effects of injuries, fatigue, suspensions, etc. That, for me, is the real important part, because that tells us how trustworthy the tactics are and the testing process is. So if you're not familiar with this, I've actually never used this before. This is the website for FMRTE, Football Manager Real-Time Editor. You can get it for Windows or Mac OS. You can't get it for Linux. I don't have it. I'm not going to download it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not really that interested in this. I'm not going to do tactics testing. I'm not going to do what, Max does on Evidence-Based Football Manager or anything like that. I have no need for this. But this is a tool that allows you to do a lot of mass edits and allows you to have more advanced search, allows you to freeze things so that you can select certain attributes and prevent them from improving or from becoming worse. And you can also do a whole bunch of different things. You can give your team extra points in the competition. You can cheat in all sorts of different ways and so on and so forth, right? So this is what they use, right? That is a pretty important thing to understand, because that will help you understand whether these tactics are worth downloading or not. They absolutely are, and these tactics actually end up working really, really well because of the rigorous testing process that they go through. As much as possible, the point with these tactics is to isolate the tactic from every other thing in the game to make sure that at least the tactic part is right. Now, what does this mean? This means that if you use one of these downloaded tactics and you're really, really bad at this game, and you get your players upset with you, and you have cohesion problems, and you sold off all of the players that play in the outfield, and you try to use nothing but goaltenders or do something totally stupid like that, it's probably not going to work, and you're probably going to end up losing games, which is the way that it really should be. Though you still might win more games than you would lose because of the power of the tactic and the influence that this beautiful setup that the tactic has been exerting on players, right? What this means, among other things, is that the tactic is important in Football Manager, but is only important to an extent. There are a lot of random things that happen, whether they're injuries or people getting upset with you for no apparent reason or whatever, people just not being professional and things like that. And then there are other things that happen that you have some control over, like your transfers, getting rid of players who are maybe very popular, getting rid of players who are team leaders, or bringing guys along who are, North Korean strikers who make your biggest striker really upset and then he has to leave and stuff like that. That stuff also matters in Football Manager, right? It's not that you just get the tactic and you win every game. You have to actually manage the team no matter what. So in the bigger conversation about whether it is morally correct to use downloaded tactics or not, I think once again we have to say that while it does give you an advantage, it's not the full game. There's a lot of randomness that goes in, there's a lot of user input that goes into it, and there's a lot of other things that happen that make it so that tactics are not going to guarantee you victory every single time. That's sort of the way that it works. Now, my hope for me, as I embark upon this latest save and use no downloaded tactics at all, is that the game will be at least somewhat forgiving for me and my kind of ridiculous attempts to make something out of nothing, and that we can have at least some sort of success in game despite my ignorance and stupidity. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun to watch, though, especially if I end up crashing and burning, because as you know from watching others, it's a lot of fun to watch some of us on YouTube suffer a little bit. Anyway, there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll talk more about this sort of thing as we move along. Talk to you later. Bye.